The BumbleKast is for entertainment purposes only. The host's comments and opinions, and those of their guests, are wholly their own and do not represent that of any other entity. Content is provided as is, with no guarantees of accuracy or timeliness. Unauthorized redistribution or editing of the BumbleKast in whole or in part is strictly prohibited.
It's a BumbleKast Mini, sponsored by Luna B.
Hello, my friend SJG202021 wanted to ask these questions for a BumbleKast Mini. I'd love for this one to be dedicated to them for this episode, and here are their questions they would really love to have answered. If Scourge were to take Verti-Cal and Horizont-Al with him into the Destructix, how would it develop? Not only is it valuable for him to have two nigh omnipotent reality warpers on his side, but it may also develop the whole all it takes is a bit of selfishness and decency, and you would be just like me theme Sonic was setting up.
The whole thing with Al and Cal is weird, because like they existed in their own very special spatial nonsense zone.
Yes.
And they made enough sense in Zone Jail where, one, their powers were dampened, so they were brought on the same level as everybody else. And two, because that zone was already kind of funky in its relationship with all other reality. But I don't know how they would exist in other zones. Like, would they maintain their weird axle alignment? Would they still be able to transform? Wow, what would they be even? And on top of that, when they were suppressed, they were back to their normal, goofy, jovial Bert and Ernie selves.
Right.
So they wouldn't want to work with Scourge out of principle. And then once they transformed into the malevolent god forms, they wouldn't want to work with them because they're malevolent god forms. I don't think Scourge could have had them on the team. I do think he might be stupid enough to try.
Well, I mean, this is Scourge we're talking about. He wasn't a very smart boy.
No, but I think Fiona would be able to talk him down and say, no. Leave them in jail, please. We can't handle. We already have like 4 or 5 other pets. No, you can't have 2 more.
Oh man, when Fiona Fox is the reasonable one in your relationship, you know that there's some pretty messed up people. Oy. Did Al and Cal get stronger after being hit by the Ultimate Annihilator and turning into robots? There are several statements that imply that, like in the Sonic Archives and Select Books Who's Who profiles. In a way, I see them as Doomsday-type characters who can develop new abilities and resistances on the fly.
It has been so long since I messed with that canon, I don't remember.
That
does sound familiar, though.
You have to really think.
Like, it sounds familiar that there was some kind of ripple effect from the Ultimate Annihilator that affected them, which would explain why they went from Muppets to murder machines.
Yeah.
So if that was established in the stories, then yeah, I can't really deny what's in the print.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, you could, but then you'd be wrong.
Yeah.
Do Al and Cal have the capacity to actually kill each other? Considering their broken regeneration, since after the Ultimate Annihilator regenerated from their ethereal essences, aka souls, they'd at minimum have to have the ability to manipulate and destroy souls, which I can see them having as reality warpers.
I don't know. What they were, the scope of their ability was all so ill-defined. I don't know. And again, it was within the context of their own weirdo zone. So it's like, does it work there but not elsewhere?
Yeah.
Like, if you observe them, does that break down the quantum state of their godhood? I got nothing. I don't know.
Yeah. They were trying and failing for a long time in their own zone, I believe, right? They were fighting each other like constantly, forever.
I think that's how it was. And
they couldn't.
I mean, it could be that they would just have equal power. Thus.
Yeah.
Well, that's why they grabbed Sonic and Tails, to make them their champions.
Yeah.
To settle the fight for them, because they couldn't actually do it.
Yeah.
But then you get kind of into the question of, can an unbreakable object resist an unstoppable force?
Yeah. Yep. All right, let's move on to the next one. Do you think Al and Cal have enough power to stand up in a fight against the likes of Supersonic and other gods like Dark Gaia, Enerjack, and Solaris?
Maybe. Again, it's all within... Is it the context of their zone, or can they do this outside of their zone? Like, when they got released in Zone Jail, they started running rampant, but we didn't stay with them long enough to see if that was like godly power or just big boomsticks, you know?
No, boomsticks is a different thing.
So, and they called themselves gods, but it's just the two of them. For all we know, they got warped, and one's like, "Well, I'm a god of destruction now." The other one's like, "Well, so am I." Nuh-uh, yeah, nuh-uh, and they start shooting.
Well,
they could be just like very powerful, but we don't know.
They're gods of their universe because they're like the only any beings in their universe, aren't they? That we ever saw, at least.
Yeah, as far as I can tell.
Yeah. So, yeah, that's weird. Why didn't Al and Cal use their powers when freed from the inhibitor collars? All they did was damage the zone jail for a bit, when ideally they should have warped the entire no zone into their personal sinister playground, like Jennie from DBZ Fusion Reborn did.
There, I think it's evidence that they aren't fully capable outside of their zone. Again, it's been so long since I dabbled in this and wrote it, I don't remember the exact details of the lore or the thinking at the time.
Mm-hmm.
But it could be that they were indeed gods of their own zone, and then in the parallel zone, or no, perpendicular zone, zone jail zone.
One of those.
They were just really powerful. I don't know.
Al and Cal arrive in Sonic's universe for a few days to cause mischief MLP Discord style. How do they interact with a local cast of Sega, Archie, and IDW characters? And how do our human and furry friends cope with the existence of these two goofballs?
In this scenario, I'm imagining them more like very vertices-oriented Mixia-Spitlixes. Not the giant machine gods, but the little Muppet Man forms with their funny hats floating around causing mischief. And for one thing, it's a lot easier to fit everybody on the page with that. Scale is something to be considered. And two, I think it's just more fun.
Yeah.
Right now. And I guess they would just mess with, what is up and down and left and right for these folks. Inverting your personal controls. Turning gravity inverted so Tails is like flying straight into the dirt. Or Sonic goes in for a spin dash and nope, he's going off to the side now. Bye. Probably have it come down to something like Sally or Lanolin or Amy getting the bright idea to somehow turn the two against each other. So they're using their spatial abilities on each other. And I don't know, maybe inadvertently getting their heads knocked together so they can be thrown in the dimensional cage, or you rub the magic lamp and send them home, or whatever it is.
I feel like Whisper would lose patience with them like almost immediately. I know I would. Let's say that Solaris is now more or less redeemed and semi-frequently visits Sonic's world an incarnation of a human. How would you characterize this Solaris, not Mephiles, as an actual character? I can see becoming something like a Beerus for Sonic and Friends.
Maybe. I've never considered Solaris in that regard. I mean, with Beerus, you have the entertaining notion of him being very nonchalant about global destruction, but being drawn to earthly desires. Earth is maintained because it has the best cuisine in this universe. And you just keep him satisfied by keeping him fed. So there's a degree of hostility there, but there's also that punchline that makes him kind of endearing. Plus, he's got a sick design.
Yeah.
Solaris, we don't really know what its motivation was outside of reset time, and we don't know for what purpose. Like, is that just an animalistic lashing out? Is that a conscious desire to start things over for reasons? I need a motivation. Mm-hmm. What's my motivation, Mr. Director?
Apparently, Solaris was hinted to be good and willing to share its time warping abilities.
I am not familiar with that bit of lore, so citation needed, but I'm not going to discount it straight up.
Yeah. Can we have some information on the Ixis deity from the Archie reboot? The entity that Nagus was worshipping and that got sealed away by lesser chaotic forces?
That was all part of like the extremely long con. I had for the cosmology of post-reboot, which I will be covering in Lost Hedgehog Tales eventually. I promise, one day.
Mm-hmm.
Suffice to say, your kind of bog standard evil entity, darkness, godly being.
Yeah. All right, next question. We have Solaris, a god that was split into Mephiles and Iblis, as well as Illumina, a goddess that was split into Lumina and Void. And then we have Chip, Light Gaia, and Dark Gaia. How would the full Gaia be like in your vision? Hence the name, and probably be female like in Greek mythology.
And here we dive back into greater plans ahead for the cosmology post-reboot.
Oh, man.
You're hitting real close to home, and that's fun. I would imagine, and this was, again, don't want to get into too much details right now, but I was thinking some kind of middle ground between horrible nightmare fuel centipede monster and cuddly chihuahua. Because if you squint real hard, the long, I don't know, kind of croissant shape that Dark Gaia has for a head, and the very wide chihuahua-like ears of Chip.
Yeah.
There's a visual parallel there if you squint really, really hard.
You'd have to squint really hard, like really hard.
I mean, what you might ultimately end up with is some kind of very fluffy centipede-like Furby, which is terrifying, but also kind of cuddly.
I know some people who are into monsters like that, sure.
Yeah, so...
I still like the version of Dark Gaia that we got in that off panel. It's just Chip in a leather jacket and boots. Sounds familiar. One last question. Lastly, let's ship gods. We couldn't get out of it, Ian. We couldn't escape. We had one last shipping question.
Talk about divine intervention.
How would Solaris X Illumina go? The humanoid Solaris, not the stone monster. Why not the stone monster? How dare you?
Yeah.
Rude.
Why are you taking away his best look, man?
What?
It's best look. There? Can it be defined?
I don't know.
It's timeless one way or the other.
Love love is love. You don't get to determine what form it takes. Come on.
I don't know. You have something that can defy the flow of time and something that defies any boundary of reality, which is the dreamscape. It's going to be a long date.
Yeah, something like that.
Or a mercifully brief one, considering they can just say, no, it's done now. And it just simply is.
True.
Although, I mean, if Solaris has any game whatsoever, he'd have to just lean in and raise one of those stony eyebrows and say, hey there, did you know you're my dream girl?
I think we're over. I think we're done.
Yeah, very much so, please.
Boo.
Like I said, mercifully brief. Anyway, thank you to Luna B for sponsoring this BumbleKast Mini. If you want one of your own or to sponsor a standard question or other person yourself, head over to patreon.com/BumbleKast or Ko-fi.com to get your own BumbleKast Mini. Be good to yourselves, be good to each other, and we will see you next time on the BumbleKast.
Take care, everybody.